Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. Today, I wanted to get on and talk about people pleasing and how it affects our energy systems. And by energy systems, I'm mainly talking about the chakra system. But if you compare it to the traditions of Eastern Asian countries and whatnot, of the meridian system, then you can get a sense of the fact that we're talking about the way that energy flows through the body, and then how that affects the different organ systems that it's related to. So when we think about people pleasing, we don't necessarily think about how it relates to our energy body. And so I just want to explain the chakra system very simply, in very basic terms, just so you understand where I'm coming from, and to give you sort of a frame for what I'm going to talk about as far as people pleasing. So when we think about the energy centers of the chakra system, they run up through the center of our body, and those are the main energy centers, but there's all kinds of other ones that are spread throughout our whole body, and it's sort of like they're sending little messages to the main energy centers, and then those energy centers get relayed up through the core of our body up to the crown of our head. And so there's different chakras, and they represent different energies and different colors, different sensations, different feelings, and and then also represent the and have characteristics that represent various aspects of our character and our way of being. So, and then those relate to the physical body and the different organs and systems within our body. So when we think about people pleasing, it would be very easy to say that it only affects sort of the root chakra or the sacral chakra, or sacral chakras, because that's where the seat of our creativity, our sensuality, our sense of groundedness comes from. But when we broaden it out a little bit more, we can get a sense of how it impacts each one of our chakras. And so what happens, though, is as the energy is flowing and it goes counterclockwise up through the center of our body and out, so it starts at the root or the base of our spine, and it moves upward up to the crown of our head and outward. If anywhere along the way there's a lot of imbalance in the different chakras and the main ones, it can really throw things off and imbalance everything around it, so that it's not that one chakra would be affected and all of the rest of them would be fine, because that's just not the way real life works either, right? So we can be burnt out in our career and feel that it doesn't affect other aspects of our lives, but we'd be lying to ourselves if we said that, right? Because everything that we do and the environments that we are in and the people that we're around, it's all so interconnected, right? So that it all affects everything. And so, when we think about the root chakra at the base of our spine, we talk about getting grounded and anchored. And so if we're constantly trying to please other people, we're putting ourselves often in uncomfortable situations, and we're feeling untethered a lot of times. And so if we're feeling that energetically, it's going to have an impact possibly on our reproductive system, on our creativity as it moves up to the sacral area in that chakra, and our sensuality, our sexuality, and then of course more broadly or physically, it could be felt through the reproductive system as well as the bowel system. And then if it moves up further into the solar plexus, that's where our self-esteem is, and our sense of being able to trust our gut instincts. That comes from that part of our body. And so the third chakra, if that's out of balance because of our people pleasing, because when we're when we're pouring ourselves into other people and it's not reciprocated, it can really impact our self-esteem and our feelings of self-worth. And so I see this show up in relationship burnout and in relationship dynamics all the time, in that I'll have one person come to me and they're saying, I'm engaging, or I'm trying to engage my partner in some sensual play or in a deeper connection, and I'm being rebuffed and I'm being rejected, and that's really, making me feel as if I'm not, attractive enough to them, or I'm not sexy to them. And it really impacts, your self-esteem and your self-confidence. And so if that area is impacted, it can really physically be felt in a lot of stomach issues and ulcers and stuff like that, right? And of course, more broadly, if these systems and these chakras are out of balance, it's going to throw off our immune system, right? But then if we go higher into the heart chakra, how can we not talk about the heart chakra when we talk about people pleasing, right? Because we think that if we just give more of ourselves, that we'll receive more love. And that's not always the case, especially if you have people who are willing to take advantage of you and take what you're not even capable of giving sometimes, without any regard for that. So when we have people like that in our lives and we're bending ourselves over backwards to try to please them, and we're pouring our love into these people and we're not getting it in return, we can start to beat ourselves up, right? Because again, that's where the solar plexus stuff starts to come up, the self-esteem, and so we start to think that there's something unlovable about us, when and when I talk about self-love practices, there's a lot of resistance to that, because there's that feeling of being unlovable, right? So it's not that, or they just don't know how to give that to themselves, because they haven't received it fully from other people. They haven't felt it from other people and other relationships, right? So I get a lot of clients who come in and they recognize that through the work that we do, that that's their issue, that they've not had that return, that reciprocated love, that unconditional love, and that acceptance. It's then a journey to figure out, how do I give that to myself, right? If I've never had it modeled for me, how do I know what that would be? And I think that's a journey that each person has to take within themselves to figure that out, because there's not a one size fits all answer, right? And so when we talk about the chakra system and the people pleasing, we can't not talk about the throat chakra, right? How often you're saying yes when you really want to say no, and how often you're not saying no enough, right? So if you're taking on more than you're really capable of doing, given the constraints that we all have in life, right? The busyness that we have, or just the emotional capacity, right? If you're saying yes and it's putting you in a place where you're feeling very raw and vulnerable, and you keep doing that over and over and over again, you eventually you start to lose your voice in a lot of different ways, right? And so what's really beautiful in the work that I do with women is that through the work of discovering what's behind their feelings of unworthiness and feeling unloved, it's just the byproduct of that is them finding their voice and being able to really ask for what they need and want, to be able to voice their boundaries and their opinions without feeling as if they have to change themselves in any kind of way. And it really just allows them to free themselves up in so many ways. And so, but when we think about things related to the throat, of course we can't not talk about the thyroid, right? And how physically that's going to be impacted by imbalances in the throat chakra. And then if we go up further to the third eye, we're often, when we are pouring ourselves into other people, and this can happen very naturally with our children, but we need to sort of recognize where we stop and they begin, and create enough space for each person to be individual and grow in the ways that they need to grow. And this applies to all relationships, not just the parent-child or the mother-child bond, but also creating enough closeness and enough supports within that relationship to encourage that growth and evolution, right? So what often happens is, if we're so busy people pleasing and we've put ourselves on the back burner, we can often get to a point in our lives where we stop and we look around and we recognize that we lack direction. Right? We've lost touch of a sense of our goals and our dreams and aspirations, and we're left feeling sort of stuck and lacking in direction. And that affects the third eye. And so when when you think of this spot, of course, you're maybe thinking that physically it might manifest as headaches and whatnot, and tension headaches. It might affect your vision. And so the lack of direction also could come into play with being closed-minded, and and that kind of can play into the third eye as well, feeling imbalanced. So and then of course when we get to the crown chakra, if again, relating it back to the people pleasing, when we have lost touch with ourselves, we've often lost touch with spirit, whatever that means for you. We've lost touch with our connection to the earth. We've lost connection to other, and so there's this sense of longing within us to feel that connection, and then we can just feel this sort of lacking when we are feeling that imbalance of the crown chakra, right? And so it could be a real opportunity for exploration into what spirit means for you, or what other means for you, and maybe it helps you to deepen your your existing practices. Maybe it helps you explore other ones, and it doesn't necessarily have to be tied to any particular religion or practices. It can just be recognizing that you are missing connection to nature, right? So it could be as simple as reconnecting to the outdoors. And so I hope that this kind of helps to gain a little different perspective about how people pleasing just has this real, can have a real negative effect on our whole being, really. Because so I touched on the fact that it is affecting the energetic systems and the physical symptoms that arise from that. There's also that other system, the emotional system, that it's affecting, because each one of those chakras is connected to different emotional states of being as well. So when you explore the chakra system, or when you explore the energetic systems of Eastern philosophies and medicines and whatnot, there's this sense that the flow needs to be unobstructed, right? And what creates that imbalance or obstructions in those different energy centers is often unresolved and unhealed pain, right? So when we can get to the root of what's causing these issues, what often will happen is it'll sort of be an unraveling, right? But in a good way, so that we unravel into openness, into choice, and exploration and curiosity. And who doesn't want to be in that space, right? So I hope that this I hope you found this interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. If you have any questions about this, feel free to reach out to me in the comments or private message me. I'd love to chat with you. And if you'd like to explore this in a deeper way, the work that I do with clients is very much an individualized practice, so that whatever you come with is really it's unique to you, and yet some of the ideas or concepts that we have around our feelings, our emotions, and our physical body are universal, right? So that when we boil it down and we get it down to what's really going on for you, what's really at the root of why you're feeling so, feeling imbalanced, what happens is that, just it can help to enlighten you, to bring clarity, and really empower you to take, some control, more control of what's going on inside of you, on all different levels, right? Not just the physical or not just the emotional. And to recognize how interwoven all of those things are. So we can't just separate out, you have reproductive issues, and so let's just deal with the organs and systems involved in that. And it's not just that easy. Or like if you have heart issues or lung issues or whatever, it's not just that. There's more to it. There's some feelings around it. There's some energy around that. And when you can unlock that, often what happens is that it brings more balance to those areas of your life and your body and your spirit. Okay, so I hope this helped. I hope you found it interesting or useful, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you for joining me. Namaste.